So the first set of scenes, right, the opening clips, we're just going to do, it's a short set, right, and it just gives you a sense, right, of they found this comet, they try and call the president. Kate, who is the Jennifer Lawrence, right, figure, has a very intense reaction. Randall, who's Dr. Randall, who's the DiCaprio figure, right, they're talking. So we're just going to see the first couple of scenes just to orient ourselves. We're not going to chat, and then we're going to talk. So let's see now 1, 2, and 3, the 1 to 3 opening clip combined. Okay? Here we go.
How would we find out the comet's velocity in orbit, Professor Mindy?
That is a good question. Well, this will be fun. I haven't done orbital dynamics since grad school. The question is, what would Carl Sagan do? He would take it back to first principles. The topocentric vector is rho. Kate, what are the initial coordinates?
21, 24, 13.
This is fun, huh, guys?
67.
Wow, now you got me pumped.
Dr. Mindy,
All right.
how many terms do you have
This
to
is a good
calculate?
approximation. We're going to see Mars.
We're just noticing the comet the first
Now
time.
that we have the comet's orbit, we will check the ephemeris, and that will give us the distance between the comet and planet Earth.
Watch your eyes.
Why does the ephemeris keep getting lower and lower?
It's the moment of realization.
I've been running it all day. I keep getting the same result. A direct hit of Earth in 6 months and 14 days.
We've moved these clips together. They're not together in the movie.
Matthew, what are your calculations?
Our scout program is saying 6 months, 14 days.
We got 6 months and 14 days.
And it's roughly 5 to 10 kilometers wide, which
Isn't that an extinction level event?
Wow, let's not be dramatic here.
okay, first move is to get the school field trip out here to DC.
Okay, let's all calm
I
down.
need the person who first had eyes on the comet and the person in charge. Share this data immediately with Cambridge, Caltech.
They're going to the White House.
This is classified information. I serve at the discretion of the president.
Is this really
Now, let's get
happening?
a student and a dead galaxy professor to Hickam Air Force Base.
DC, right?
Okay, this is happening, right?
Kate, this isn't real, right? This is just some sort of alternate reality, right? Kate, say something.
I gotta go get high.
Warners, I need you both in DC fast. Only plane I got going there is that one.
Anyway, I am Dr. Mindy. This is.
Go, go, go!
Where do we sit, Kate?
No idea.
Is there any customary seating?
What the fuck? Is this real? Is this a goddamn joke? Holy shit. This can't be happening.
That is correct.
Are we really about to tell the President of the United States that we have just over 6 months until humankind, basically every species, is completely extinct?
That's exactly what we're about to do, yeah. Oh, gosh. Oh, God.
Okay, that's our first set of scenes. We've linked 5 scenes together, but you get the flow. Now just hold for a second. Just hold for a second. I just want to give you a factoid. So 𝗍𝗵𝗍𝗃 crunches the numbers. Okay? Right? Next 100 years, right? Put all the existential risks together. So you're talking next 100 years, 20 to 40% potential death of humanity. And I just want you to just think about that for a second. So you're about to go across a bridge. Got to go across a bridge. There's 20 to 40% the bridge is going to collapse. Over the next several hundred-year arc, if the vectors don't change, and I believe the vectors can change, and I believe they can change by changing the superstructure, right? Meaning the story of value. It's a Renaissance moment. We're at a time between worlds. We're at a time between stories. But bracket that for a second. In the next few hundred years, if we don't change the vector, right? So we're talking about 50%. And this is from a hard academic crunching of the numbers. Now, stay close. Stay close. There's the Tao and 10,000 things. Right? The Tao and the 10,000 things, the 10,000 things are those which are measurable, which are subject to the crunching of numbers. But remember that the Tao, what's the Tao? The Tao is Eros. The Tao is the interior. The Tao is that which generates mathematics. So the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao. Right? And the Tao that can be measured is not the Tao. So all of 𝗍彼_𝗶𝗏's numbers are the vector, and then there's the Tao. We're in the Tao here. In the Tao, you can enter the source code. That's what I mean by superstructure. Superstructure means, when Marvin Harris talked about it, he talked about, okay, the worldview in a kind of general, abstract, sociological way. No, right? The Tao is the story that we live in that determines every decision. We're going to talk about this more tomorrow. That's not our topic for today, but this is where we are. Just hold that moment that they just had. Right? We're literally not awake if we can't hold that moment. Right? And I often talk to even the people that are closest to me, right? And I sometimes think that, right, this is like, you know, I said to a friend of mine, he got a little upset at me, and he lives in the United States, and he's probably in the United States, kind of our lead funder in living in the United States of the center. And I said to him, X, I said, you know, for you, right, dealing with existential risk is an exciting hobby. Right? Now, so he was restraining not to hang up the phone, which I appreciated, right? But he was on the border there, right? It's not a hobby, right? And he's one of my closest buddies who I've known for 15 years. But it's not a hobby. And this keeps me up every night, because we're talking about the unborn future of trillions of people. And we're the only voice of the future. Second. Fuck me. Right? Okay. So we're now going to see a second set of clips that we've put together. We've put together 5 different clips. So this set of clips was not picked up, right, this theme, by any of the reviewers of the movie. So like a zillion reviews of this movie, and once or twice it was picked up, and it was that it was a slapstick. It was a comedy. So Don't Look Up was categorized in about half of the reviews as a comedy about the threat to Earth, and this was viewed as one of just the comedic scenes, which it's not at all. And again, these clips are not together. We identified this genre, and we linked them together. Fair? Okay? So take us to 4F. 4F, okay? 4F, here we go.
They charge an arm and a leg for this stuff. With 10 apiece ought to do it.
Oh, okay.
Hold it for a second. Hold it for a second. So they're at the White House. They're waiting to talk to the president. And now this 3-star general comes, and we're going to wind it back and start from the beginning again, and he brings them some snacks. So they're at the White House waiting to talk to the president. They've gotten off that plane that we just saw them on. They're about to tell the president, right, about this comet that's about to hit planet Earth. Okay? And we got Randall, Mindy, and we've got Jennifer, Kate, who actually discovered the comet. Take us to the beginning. Here we go.
They charge an arm and a leg for this stuff. With 10 apiece ought to do it.
Oh, okay.
Hey, grab a water.
Thank you.
I've got Kate as well.
Oh, perfect.
Thank you.
Here's a 20.
Oh, You got change? No.
Where do I pay for these? It's free. Really? Yes, it's the White House. The snacks are free.
What?
The general. He charged us for the snacks, but they're free.
Oh, gosh.
Why on earth would he do that? He's a force.
I've gone over it again.
Later and later in the movie, this
Again
is.
in my head. And I still can't make sense of it. He's a 3-star general. He works at the Pentagon.
It's the third scene.
Why would he charge us for free snacks? Maybe he just
Scene
gets
4.
off on the power. You know,
Fourth scene.
like any kind of power. It's like he knew eventually that I was going to find out that the snacks were free.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was just like a power play.
Yeah, you guys are weird.
Fifth scene.
Unless you assholes are taking me to the Bat Cave, fuck you for putting this hood on me.
Watch out for him. He'll charge you for free shit.
Let's give him a hand. Let's give him a hand. So those are 5 scenes in the movie, unrelated to each other ostensibly, that are spread through the movie. They're almost the most important scenes in the movie. So what is going on here? No one even notices it. It doesn't even get noticed in culture. Or it's like, oh, this is just a funny routine they just threw into the movie. But what's it actually talking about? Okay, so you're in someone's house, right? And they lie to you in their house. So when you're in someone's house and they're hosting you, there's this trust that's supposed to exist between you. That's kind of a structure value of reality. When I lived right in the Middle East, and I would visit my Bedouin friends, right? Even this person was your avowed enemy. And there were a few Bedouins around the area I lived who were our avowed enemies, who were actually actively involved in actual abetting terrorism against a little village that I had helped found, right? 25 years ago in a different life. But when I would go into, in 𝗟cie particularly, right, outside of 𝗟cie, right, the tent of one of the Bedouins that I thought were involved in that, when I was in their tent, I was completely safe. That was just the way it went. As you're in their tent, there's trust between us. The food's good, you eat the food, you honor the food. In this moment, there's a bracketing. Remember when we sat at that restaurant and talked about Israel, right? Right? I was going, right? And others. And so here, you're in the White House, which is ostensibly the home of Western value, ostensibly, right? And there's a fundamental violation of trust. You have a 3-star general. He doesn't need the change. So what? And she can't understand that. And you notice this goes through the whole movie. There's a thread, and there's this intuitive understanding that the movie makers have no idea about, where they're actually understanding something about the core structure of existential risk. I mean, it's wild, it's beautiful. That actually existential risk is risk, they're working on infrastructure, the whole movie is about infrastructure issues, but it's really not about an infrastructure, it's really about superstructure, it's really about interiors. And there's a collapse of trust. Does everyone get that? There's a collapse of trust. And when there's a collapse of trust, then no exchange between us can ever hold. Right? I'm going to charge you. He charges the guys, do you have change? $10? I mean, this is an insane exchange. Right? But he can't not do it. And then she thinks, right? She thinks, and it's not that the movie makers thought of it. It's not the movie makers ever read Foucault. It's just in the culture, they said, oh, power. It's power. Right? Everything is a game of power when power is the only thing left. Now, power itself has been misunderstood. Right, so we'll talk about power tomorrow. This view of power that was here, which never read Foucault, was based on Foucault, which is power's bad. But it's the only thing left, so everything's basically a power move. And underneath everything, it's all power. Well, actually, power is really exciting and important, and power's got three kinds of power, and they've got shadow, right? Bracket all that. But the point is, there's no trust. The most wild experience of Eros is trust, right? Trust is one of the core, if not the core feature of Eros, right? When Eros is denuded from cosmos, then trust disappears. Because Eros, stay with me, Eros is a value of cosmos. And Eros means, we'll talk about it tomorrow, how two things come together. How do separate parts come together, form a whole? Which is ethics. Did you ever get that sentence? There's no split between Eros and ethics. They're the same. When we wrote this in the Phenomenology of Eros, 𝗖cie can attest to this, the editor who we hired to do it has been fighting me and mad at me for 6 months. How can you say Eros and ethics are the same? And he's working through whatever he's a beautiful guy, traumatic issues are with that possibility. But actually, Eros is ethics. Eros means, there's no Eros in a vacuum. Eros means, how do parts come together? What's the trust between them? Right? So if there's Eros, and if you get that Eros is a value of cosmos, right? Eros is a first value of cosmos itself, which I spent 30 years thinking about and came to that conclusion. And after those 30 years, like a year and a half ago, I was reading Process and Reality by Whitehead, and I realized Whitehead came to some version of the same conclusion, although he writes in illegible words, so you can only understand him if you've already thought of it, because he wasn't thinking that anyone needed to read him and understand him. But you should read Process and Reality, right, and the footnotes, right? But actually, Eros, Whitehead, who writes Principia Mathematica with Bertrand Russell at Cambridge, so who we're talking about, right? Eros is the value of cosmos, and the core quality of Eros is trust. And what we realize in this scene is there's no trust. And she keeps going back to it, there's no trust. Why would he do that? So why did he do that? Right? He did that because why wouldn't he? Right? In other words, the second you remove value, then every interaction is rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics. Because that's what's left. What's left is our interactions, a success story. And every interaction, and actually the movie completely unconsciously, but fucking brilliantly, understood something that it didn't understand that it understood. Does everyone get that? Which is that literally at the micro level, the microeconomic level, every single interaction becomes, right, a rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics interaction, and then you exponentialize that throughout the system, you've got existential risk. Literally. Literally. So, wow. I mean, it's actually shocking, and again, culture misses what it said. It's an incredible moment. I mean, it's gorgeous, right? And it's at a micro level. In other words, what happens is reality is made up of billions and billions of micro interactions. Stay close. Billions of micro interactions. That's what Alex Pentland at MIT Media Lab, who's one of the primary architects of the internet, who calls himself the father of wearables, who's not going to like me in the fall, right, basically points out. Billions of interactions. Pentland is a hidden student, which he hasn't acknowledged, and I've read him deeply, of B.F. Skinner. And there's 25 major structural parallels between Skinner and Pentland. The MIT Media Lab architects the internet. Stay close. These are the people that are, my friends, right at the MIT Media Lab. This is the apotheosis of Western civilization. But B.F. Skinner, who's beyond brilliant. He was the most important psychologist, really, of the 20th century. And I would say he's the most important meta-theorist in the world today who's hidden. What he basically said is that we're actually facing existential risk. No one got that this is what he thought. He has a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity, written in 1971. And the book's actually about existential risk. That's actually what the book's about. And what he says is there's only one way out. He doesn't say this clearly. You got to read the book very carefully. I spend a year reading this, and I would call Zach in the middle of the night and leave him messages, just blown away by the book and blown away by Skinner's brilliance. He didn't become Skinner for nothing, right? It was it's brilliant and horrific. And what Skinner realizes is, and he creates a vision which was called a Skinner's box. How many people have heard of a Skinner's box? Right? Half the people. Skinner's box means, right, you're in a box, right, and basically through ratios, schedules of reinforcement, you control either the pigeons or the rats. So the Skinner's box is, how do you actually control unconsciously the action taking place? So stay close to me. This is shocking beyond imagination, because we're talking about the center of Western civilization. None of this is published. I mean, it's and we're about to kind of ship it. It's insane. So what Pentland does is, he basically says he's going to recreate a Skinner's box on the internet. Pentland is actually Skinner's hidden student. So it's kind of in the world of Sith Lords, right? The Sith Lord always has a hidden Sith Lord. Now, Skinner's a beautiful guy. I want to make that clear. You'd love to have him over for dinner. And Pentland's a beautiful guy. That's not the point, right? That's not the point. This is not about whether you want to have dinner. They're great people in the sense of feeling that they feel like they're doing their best. So what Skinner says is, and he writes a novel in 1948, right, called Walden 2, where he says basically you've got to create a society which is essentially a Skinner's box. Pentland translates the word Skinner's box using a euphemism, and he calls it, he says, the world has to become a living laboratory. But his word living laboratory is precisely, phrase by phrase, structure by structure, a Skinner's box. And a living laboratory means he realizes in a data-driven world that the world is driven by billions of interactions, billions of micro-interactions. And if you can place the world in a living laboratory and you can govern how those interactions happen, you can avert existential risk. So Skinner's not a bad guy. Skinner is desperate. And what he says is the only way you can actually control existential risk, right, and he hides the term, but that's what he's talking about, is create the world in a controlled environment. Pentland sanitizes it, calls it a living laboratory, where you collect all the data instantaneously, and through that data you can drive the entire system. Wow. Wow. It's like, wow. It's wow. This hasn't been written about in The Guardian or in the Wall Street Journal, right? Or by, right? This is the surface. This is what's right underneath the surface. But what does that mean? So it's actually enormously hopeful. Why? Because they actually got it right? In other words, what you can do is, you can do the exact same thing on the other side. In other words, if you can control, you realize the world is controllable by billions of interactions, you can superimpose that control from above invisibly, or you can actually intervene into the value structure. You can create a new story of value, and a new story of value is something that we all actually live inside of. Do you get that? It's shockingly beautiful. And I've literally spent 20 hours a day the last 4 years trying to think this through. Bless you. Right? In other words, you can actually create a more effective, right, Skinner's box, or more effective living laboratory by actually, right, creating a story of value that's actually not made up, right? It actually incorporates the best information we have. No more. That's 2. That's enough. Right? It incorporates the best information we have, and we begin to live inside that story of value, and that story of value generates trust, honor. Remember those words? Nobility. Right? The call to be noble. Right? The honorable one. Right? The call to, right, to integrity. Right? So what this movie scene is, it's a collapse of integrity in a micro event, and the unconscious implication is that that micro event is exponentialized throughout the system, and that's correct. But you can actually exponentialize throughout the system a different set of micro events. Not through unconsciously controlling what Kahneman calls fast thinking, but to actually generating a universal grammar of value. Wow. which is not imposed, it's not dogmatic, it's not owned by a religion, right? It's a universal grammar of value, this is a big sentence, which is a context for our diversity. That's a really important sentence. And this is not a homogenizing of the world. This is not an obliterating of all the unique instruments. This is a shared score of music. And the only response we have today to existential risk is the possibility of a universal grammar of value not arbitrarily created by somebody. That'd be an imposition, right? You actually have to show that that grammar of value is structural to cosmos, and that's completely doable. We get to that later in the week. But it's like, wow, right? In other words, living inside a story is exponentially more powerful than living inside of a Skinner's box. And I suggest to everyone to actually buy the book Walden 2 by Skinner, 1948. Read the book. I mean, it's shocking. So we can actually create a story of value, right? Last thing, and we'll go on to the next set of clips. How many kids do you think cheat to get into school? The numbers are astronomical. Astronomical. In other words, the overwhelming majority of Western students, if they need to get into a key school and they have the possibility of cheating, will. Why? Why? Stay with me. It's crazy, wildly beautiful, and horrifying and exhilarating, because actually it's what our committees said, right? And it's give me a lever and I can change the world, right? The lever is a new story of value. But here's a story, okay? There's a figure. Can everyone place attention? We okay, everybody? We okay? We'll just place our attention, right? A roll down the back, okay? There's a figure, right, named 𝗟cie bych. Right? Don't name your kid that, right? In the 1st century, who becomes a traitor. And so there's a discussion in a text of the Jerusalem Talmud in the 3rd century in Aramaic about why he became a traitor. And these discussions are written in Zen koan-like form. By koan, you know what I mean. Very, very short, very kind of brief. And so what the text says is, right, without these words, it's got like 7, 8 words, but it basically says he became a traitor because, right, when he was born, the masters came, right, and they visited his parents. His parents saw this pillar of fire hovering above the house, and they managed to do this just in a very short amount of words, but I'm giving you what's unpacking. The parents of 𝗟cie bych see a pillar of fire hovering above the house, and they say, "Ma gadol kocha shel Torah." How great, right, is the power of wisdom. So how great is the power of wisdom is why he became a traitor. You know why that's a koan? Because it doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, what does that mean? So I thought about it, right? And I was 30. I was flying to, where was I flying to? To Sydney, Australia. We were stuck, right, in Singapore, right? For Olivier, he's not here with us this year. He really wanted to be. We were stuck in Singapore, so I had a day in Singapore. Nothing to do but think. So I was thinking about that passage, right? It's like, what does that mean? And all of a sudden you realize what it means, of course. See, what the passage means is that there's 2 kinds of communication that culture or our parents as, or our culture as parents, right, give us. There's content communication and there's dream communication. There's values communication. Content communication is what they actually tell us. But dream or value communication is what they really believe, right? What they really, right? And so he's a baby, right? So this is a proto-early infancy understanding, and he hears, and obviously all through his childhood he hears how great is the power of wisdom. What he gets is he feels the inflection like a child does. The issue's power. So he becomes a master of wisdom, but at the core is power, and the greatest power of that day was Rome. And so he aligns with Rome, of course. Of course he aligns with Rome. Where else would he align? Right? Because the transmission of dream, the dream communication was, right, power. That's what it means to live inside a story, right? And as when you live inside a story of value, right, there's an exponential application across the systems, right, across billions and billions of events. Once you step out of the 𝗏, do you get what I mean? We've stepped out of the 𝗏. Now, you can never actually step out of the 𝗏, but we think we've stepped out of the 𝗏. Once you think you've stepped out of the 𝗏, you're out of the 𝗏. And that exponentially affects everything. And the result is, right, major movie, right, made by the major movie-making apparatus of the Western world 5 months ago. I didn't make this up. This is not some, right, and the scene, the hidden scene that threads throughout this movie is a micro event, which appears in 6 scenes in the movie, that gets unnoticed by the micro-targeting of reviewers, but actually is the theme that goes through the movie, which is a micro event, no trust. I'm gonna charge you $30. And it's everything. It's everything. Cha. Wow, right?